much. The award for a faculty member in the sciences goes to Evan Morris, Associate Professor of Diagnostic Radiology, Psychiatry, and Biomedical Engineering.
I'd like to thank the awards committee for selecting me. It's a great honor. Thank you to my wife for being willing to be uprooted yet again to come to Connecticut. The life of an academic scientist can be a peripatetic one. Thank you to my trainees who conspired on my behalf by writing letters, and a special thank you to the lead co-conspirator, who shall remain nameless, Jana. It is truly heartwarming to be held in high regard by one's students. Now, as an example, coincidentally, the same day that I learned of this wonderful honor, I received a phone call from my program officer, that is my liaison at the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. We biomedical scientists live in hope and fear of such phone calls. In this case, it was a bit of good news. Actually, 3.3 million bits of good news. But I am not exaggerating when I say that learning that I was to be recognized as a mentor was far more moving and more satisfying. Now, it probably goes without saying that students today are not like they were when I was a student. Today, a professor walks into a classroom to be greeted by a phalanx of laptops. Are students even listening to what you say? Are they watching an online lecture of somebody more interesting than you? Are students, what are they doing? Are they slicing fruit? The first Yale lecture that I gave with a colleague. And the laptops remained unmoved, and so apparently were some of the students. The lecture built to its crescendo. My colleague and I described our daring hypothesis about treatments for alcoholism, just as we were about to reveal our secret, how we would use brain imaging to test our hypothesis. A student looked up from his laptop. "Professor?" "Yes." "I think someone's already done this." "That's impossible." "Well, I'm reading it on the internet. And it says right here, interaction between family history of alcoholism and blah, blah, blah." What? Our brilliant ideas, all of our preliminary work, the certainty of a grant. I could feel myself getting faint. "Stop!" my colleague Suchitra ordered. "Read us the abstract of the paper slowly," she said. I continued to panic. After a few tense moments, it became clear that the paper had not scooped us. Whew. It's a good thing, because as I said to the class, I was about ready to jump out that window. An arm raised in the back of the class. "Professor?" "Yes." "We're in the basement." To me, there are three simple keys to mentoring. A, always have great students. B, treat them like colleagues. C, expect great things from them. I have been very lucky with A. I have tried my best to adhere to B, and they have surpassed all expectations with regard to C. Where does my mentoring philosophy come from? My graduate school mentors at Case Western, Guy Chisholm and Jerry Seidel, and my postdoc advisor at Mass General, Nat Alpert, were all mentors extraordinaire. They were supremely knowledgeable in their fields, and they engaged me like a colleague. They gave me the necessary space to figure out what I was good at. As it turned out, I learned I had 3 thumbs. Not so great for doing experiments, particularly with radioactivity. So my advisor helped me with the experiments, but I also learned that I had a modicum of aptitude for the computer modeling of what we were doing, and my advisors let me run with it in a directed way. Now this point is worth highlighting. In graduate school and as a postdoc, I was fortunate to be supported by pre- and postdoctoral training grants from NIH. I believe those training grants, which covered my tuition and stipends, gave my mentors a bit of extra flexibility to allow me to pursue the aspects of our research that most interested me. So consider this little speech a plug for government-funded tuition and stipend training grants from NIH and NSF. Graduate training in the sciences is a sort of apprenticeship. Our students work on projects that we, the advisors, have garnered funding for. The students must produce whatever work product we promised in the grant. But if the students are funded on a training grant, there's at least greater latitude in what they can pursue and how they can do it. And that, in turn, helps them discover their talents. Now, however great the students may be, when they first come to graduate school, they don't know specifically what they're great at. So, to borrow some terms from my father, who's in the front row, some students are born to be specialists, while others are born to be generalists. Their mentor, within the confines of his or her own work, must help the student to identify their strengths and harness them. My mentors repeatedly told me that I was a teacher. After about 10 years of wandering in the professional desert, I came to see that they were right. As I mentioned, graduate work in the sciences is an apprenticeship. It's my feeling that the more the student is exposed to the whole gamut of tasks that must be done to keep the scientific enterprise going, the better the position they are in to see A, what they are good at, and B, if they even want the life of an academic scientist. It isn't for everyone. Recall I mentioned peripatetic in the opening credits. There's a lot more to science than science. There's writing, there's presenting work in public, there's teaching, there's reviewing, there's record keeping, there's dealing with government regulations, there's writing. Did I mention this writing? This, frankly, comes as a great shock to most graduate students in the sciences. Now, I'm sure that someday we'll all put our iPhones to our foreheads and we'll beam our thoughts directly to the funding agencies who will give us the money. But as of now, we still have to write clear sentences and clear paragraphs to persuade people of the merits of our ideas. So for students being exposed to the day-to-day pressures of the job, and even to the absurdities of the job, that's what makes a valuable apprenticeship. Now, a few years ago, my colleagues and I were executing a series of overly complicated brain imaging studies. We wanted to know, how does the brain respond to alcohol and the cues for alcohol, the sights, the smells? Volunteers would lie in a big PET scanner wearing mirror goggles to look behind themselves, and that allowed them to look out the back of the scanner. What they saw was a restaurant table set with alcoholic drinks of their choosing. The table, covered in a black tablecloth, rotated every few minutes to reveal a new drink, new alcoholic drink, and when it did, magically, the odor of that same new drink was bubbled through tubes and wafted in front of their noses. All of this complicated experiment The table movement, the smells, was exquisitely coordinated in time. And it, of course, had to be controlled by a computer. Well, you guessed it. Just as we were getting ready for one experiment one day, the computer went on the fritz. As the time for the scan approached, we were furiously resoldering wires and rebooting computers, all to no avail. Now, these are fabulously expensive experiments, and you never want to cancel one once you've started. And because they involve radioactivity, you can't stop. You can't just call a timeout. As the volunteer entered the room, I turned to my graduate student at the time and I said, "Mark, under the table." For the next hour, I kept my eye on my watch and did my best imitation of a computer. Beep, beep. And at that, signaled Mark from under the table to rotate the tabletop, exposing the new alcoholic drink. Now, lest you think that I may have exploited or belittled or traumatized my graduate student, fear not. He's now a professor at Harvard, where no doubt he is ordering his own graduate students under the table. So thank you again for this wonderful honor, and congratulations to all.